welcome to today's lecture session. Today we will be learning about one of the very important ways of controlling the deviations from what is the expected and what is the actual performance or uh, like expenditures based on like how good you like pre-plan for it. And one of that topics which help us in understanding that is budgeting. So today we'll be learning about budgeting, the concepts, importance, the process and benefits of budgeting. The session will be focusing on the budgeting as a function of management and its benefits in the organization's management. Now, before we move forward, we need to understand what is budgeting. It is the process of allocating a finite amount of resources to the prioritized needs of the organization. So we will be discussing about budgeting from a very general perspective first, because we have to understand like if we have limited resources and we know like what we will be doing, then we have to allocate those resources so that to the respective heads under the like under for the different activities that are required to do for the goal, so that we have enough resources to do those activities, essential activities required to reach our goal. So um, sometimes we think like budgeting is only about money, so which is actually not. So budgeting could be about your any resources, it could be about your prioritizing, about your time, allocation of your time, allocation of human resources. So it could be in any aspect, like whenever you're talking of, yes, when we give a like monetary component to it, it helps us in understanding the like what we the or rather the cost benefit analysis in a much better way, or we understand like whether you are more close towards whatever you are assumed that it needs to be allocated and how many have been able to utilize for it. But generally whenever you're talking of budgeting is there, which is we can talk it to be a pre-planning, we can talk it to be a self-discipline of like uh, finding out like doing things in a very systematic way. So we will look at the concept of budgeting from a general perspective first, and in that aspect we will discuss some of the financial aspects of it also. So when we discuss about budgeting, it is the process of allocating a finite amount of resources to the prioritized needs of the organization. It is a continuous cycle of planning and evaluations used by an entity in order to achieve the stated goals and objectives of the organization. It is a tool which is generally used to control decisions in the organizations. So we understand budgeting as a concrete, precise process of the total operation of the enterprise, and of course in monetary terms. Like that is additional to it, but the primary of thing is it's a concrete, precise process of allocating your resources into different heads which will help you to reach the goal properly. So it is also an operational plan for a definite period, usually an year, and it is expressed in financial terms and are based on an expected income and expenditure. So you can like broaden this definition also into like, yeah, the resources that you have at hand and the resources maybe that you can allocate under each of the headings of like work that you need to do based on the prioritization of the work itself and amount of resources required to do it in a better way. So it is all about, it is that operational plan. Now, why budgeting is important to any organization? It is budgeting is important because it is a comprehensive planning process which is very vital due to the scope and diversity of operations in a particular organization. The budgeting also improves decision making by delegating and the spending authority and providing the accountability. Budgeting also allows management to monitor where the organization is by tracking and evaluating the spending decisions. So, we have already understood about the controlling, we have also understood about the span of control, delegation of authority. So, whenever we're talking of budgeting, also we find like it is a delegation of the spending authority and the providing of accountability for that. So it really helps as a tracking mechanism to find out like if a budget has been allocated and how it has been spent, in under what headings it has been spent. It helps to understand whether the organizational goal, where the organization wants to see itself through different activities which have been mapped to various divisional activities or departmental activities, coming down to the group goals and the individual goals, and the allocation of resources and budgeting has been done for it. So if you have utilized that budget properly, then what happens, like we know, like properly for the work for which it has been allocated and achieved the desired outcome, then we know like we are moving closer to the desired or the expected goal, and in that way we can check for the deviations. If we see like the budget has not been utilized properly, there has been gaps for it, then we need to like query about, find out why the budget remained unutilized. Was it due to the lack of planning? Was it due to lack of like efforts taken? Was it due to the lack of resources? Was it due to the lack of communication? Or maybe that much of budget is not required. Like one division may be having a deficiency and the other maybe is having a surplus. So in next year when you go for planning, do we need to reallocate the budget based on the amount spent on the last year and the like effectiveness and efficiency shown in the last year, and what will be the projected like expenditure or outcome in this year, and based on that reallocate the whole budget. So this is very important from the functioning of the organization, and also for comprehensive planning process, so that we find like there is more or less equitable distribution based on the priority of the work and the map to their competencies and how they are placed according to the order of importance and in reaching the organization's goal. So budgeting helps us to like plan and again review and again reallocate the resources in the based on this feedback that we receive. So that's why it is what we feel like planning and budgeting are very interlinked with each other. So budgeting is useful because it enhances communication, it is linked with coordination. So the process of developing a budget forces manager to consider the goals of the organization, objectives, and specify the means for achieving them. Budgeting is also linked with the controlling mechanism as we were discussing. It is useful because it provides a basis for evaluating the performance, as we have discussed. Like if you're not able to spend the budget allocated to you, then what happened? If you have spent, you spent it in an effective and worthwhile manner? So budgeting provides a basis for evaluating performance. Performance evaluation is carried out by comparing actual performance with the planned and budgeted performance. Significant deviations from the planned performance are associated with three potential causes. So what we see over here, like when you talk of budgeting of the financial plan, whether it is related to the production or marketing or with the administration. And then what is the action taken to implement the plan, and then what is the result, what is the revenue spent, and what is the statement. So, and it leads to the comparison of the budget and the actual result and evaluation. In evaluation, we generally ask questions about, like, did the organization, the conditions of the organization change? Like, as we are discussing, like, were there certain constraints which prevented in reaching the expected result? Then was manager's performance good or bad? And also, like, whether the plan was well conceived, like whether the budgeting was actually done properly or not. So these are the three questions which were like asked in the, like, when you're talking of the evaluation of the performance. And this evaluation is also related to the manager's performance, like whether they are rewarded or they're reprimanded for it. And then again, with this review, it may go for the change of the operation or the revised plan, and again, which gives a feedback loop to the reallocation of the budget done under the production amount, the marketing amount, or the administration amount. These are the three pillars which helps in to take the action. And after the result and evaluation, asking these three questions, we get to evaluate the performance, which is again gives a feedback loop in reallocation of the budget. So we can see, like, this is a cyclical process which goes on, and then we have to see at each step, like, what is the deviation and how that deviation of the actual from the expected can be closed, and whether it is again, whether we should reevaluate the plan or we look into the constraints and again revise the things that we have done. That's why planning, budgeting, and controlling are very interlinked processes with each other. Budgets, when you talk of developing the budgets, it is prepared for departments, it is prepared for divisions, and also it is prepared for the company as a whole. So it is the budget committees responsible for approval of the budget by the senior managers, the presidents, and then the CFO and various vice presidents and the controller. So there is a budget committee which discusses, and it's a team which looks into the what are the expected results and what are the expected finance required for reaching the objectives that are defined. And it, as a team, all of them come to understand what is the budget that needs to be done. So it is a good brainstorming exercise rather, where we need to look into the feedback taken from various levels. So for that also you'll find, like, if you want to relate it, budgeting is also very much intricately related not only with planning and controlling but also with reporting, as we will be seeing in the next lecture sessions. Because until and unless we are reporting things, how it is getting done in the organization properly, where the deviations are occurring, why the deviations are occurring, how much maybe more resources we require to do any work properly, then without this feedback, we are not able to do our planning properly or the budgeting properly. So budgeting is also very well related to the reporting processes in the organization. So budgeting, as we see, is a top-down approach where the goals are pushed down from the top management. It is also a bottom-up approach where lower level managers are the primary source of information used in setting the budget. This is where we were talking of the reporting relationships and reporting the reports submitted by the lower level managers to those listed higher up in their organization, next higher up in the level of authority, so that the people who are sitting at the top layer can understand how the money is utilized till the lower level of the organization, and what are the requirements, so that whether there is excess, whether there is deficiency, so that it can be thought of reallocating also. So the budget time periods may range from months to several years or even more. The key point is that there is an inverse relationship between the length of the budget period and the details content within the budget. So definitely it will be like the it is more lengthier, then it is very difficult to like report everything in details. So maybe it is the in that it will be like focus will be on the like major headings maybe. Another thing for this, the information system, the MIS should be very strong. There should be like storehouse where to store your data. So IT system also needs to be very strong if we have to like capture the detailed information for a greater length of time intricately for all the functions of the organization. Zero-based budgeting. It is a method of budget preparation which begins each period with a clean slate. Managers must start from zero and justify budgets in every period. It is used in government budgeting and it is not commonly used in business. So, the master budgeting or the comprehensive budget includes sales budget, production budget, direct materials budget, then direct labor budget, manufacturing overhead budget, selling and administrative budget. It also includes capital acquisitions budget, cash receipts and disbursement budgets, budgeted income statement, and budgeted balance sheet. So this where we see like who are involved in the budget processes, the directors, managers and other unit leaders, vice presidents like budget director, budget office, budget committee and the board of directors. So in the when we're talking about the budget committee in the last slides, when we were talking about the team taking to be the decision, so though it is shown over here in this hierarchical manner, but it requires a lot of discussions over here, which is placed to this budget committee, lot of like um, discussions, brainstorming over here, and which is then placed to this committee for the final approval based on how well the needs of the various departments or divisions are represented and how well it is linked with the goals of the organization. Now, what is the importance of human resource in budgeting is that there is the organizational goals which are linked to the individual goals, and these two goals needs to be congruent with each other. And in doing so, the participative budgeting is very important. It is the use of input from lower and middle management employees. It is also called grassroots budgeting. So as we were talking of, if you can see, like we're talking of the reporting relationships are very important, and reporting about like how the resources were utilized, what are required more to perform in a better way. So these inputs from the lower and middle level employees are very important information which helps in mapping together the individual goals and the organizational goals together. Now there are different types of budgets. One is the capital budget, another is the operating budget, and the third is the cash budget. In capital budget, it requests for large assets which create major demands on an entity's cash flow. So these are like buildings, renovations, automobiles, softwares, systems and furniture. The purpose is to allocate funds, control risk in decision making, and set the priorities. When in talking of operating budget, these are the revenues and expenses for the various cost centers within the organization. Budgeted amounts are divided into major categories such as revenues, salaries, benefits, and non salary expenses. It encompasses supporting information such as staffing and headcounts. In cash budget, it is an estimation of the cash inflows and outflow for a specific period of time. It is used to assess whether the entity has sufficient cash to fulfill regular operations. Identifies whether too much cash is being left in unproductive capacities. So, in that, we can again reallocate it to the divisions where it is really required. Some other types of budgets are sales budget, production budget, direct materials budget, direct labor budget, overhead budget, static budget, cash receipts and disbursement budget, and flexible budget. We will discuss some examples over here. Like cash budget, it estimates the cash flows. It is a statement of cash in hand at the start of the budget period, expected cash receipts, expected cash disbursements, and the result cash balance at the end of the budget period. The cash receipts, under it is there the collection of accounts receivable, cash sales, sales of assets, borrowing, issuing stock, and other things. Some cash disbursement examples are materials purchases, manufacturing cost, operating activities, debt repayment, acquisition of new assets, income taxes, dividends, and other similar activities. Now, what is the budgeting process? There is a planning, then communication about it, and establishing the program objectives. After that, develop detailed budget based on the program objectives, compilation and revision, and which is sent to the budget committee for review and approval. It goes to the board of directors for approval, and finally it is implementation and management, which will again you'll get a feedback loop towards the planning process. Now, some of the common budgeting mistakes are not establishing program objectives prior to building the budget. So, if you do not have the program objective set, then how do you allocate resources for it? So, it is very important to establish your program objectives. Overestimating revenues or underestimating expenditures. Spreading expenditures evenly over the fiscal year. So, this is also not very sound method, because you do not know when uncertainties may come up, when you do not know whether markets are going to fluctuate or not. Not budgeting for reserves. Ignoring a well prepared budget. Preparing a budget that is based solely on prior year numbers. So, we have to take into consideration the present situations also. It is not only the prior numbers are just, these are markers for us to start from somewhere. But in case to be realistic, we need to have consideration into the present environmental situations also, and not planning for one-time expenses. So, here we will show you some examples like budgeting in merchandising and service organizations, like what are the important points, like the sales forecast, then which is classified under 3 headings like budgeted cost of services, and then marketing and administrative cost budget, which is going to have a relationship with the budgeted income statement that will lead to the cash budgets, and then will lead to the budgeted balance sheet. So similarly in retail and wholesale organizations, then it is sales forecast related to the purchases and marketing and administrative cost budget. Then it is related again to the budgeted income statement, cash budget, and budgeted balance sheets. So what we are trying to get over here is based on the nature of the organization, based on the type of work that you are doing, you have to like synchronize it with your nature of organization and type of work, and prepare the major heads of the budget. Try to see what are your major activities and program objectives, and then prepare budget accordingly based on the your nature of organization, your nature of work, your nature of priorities, your future planning also. So, what are the role of managers in budgeting is they play various types of roles while budgeting for an organization, which include that is what we were talking of role of a visionary. You need to foresee like what are the expected things which are coming up in your way and whether you are allocating resources properly for it. Role as a planner, you have to plan well for it. Role as demonstrator, anticipator, and as a role model who can do all these things well and who is following the expected results and actually performing to meet those results. Role as a commander and facilitator. Now, what we see while budgeting, there could be some ethical issues in budgeting which we are going to highlight over here. The ethical issues which are considered over here, like the company should recognize the trade-off between encouraging unbiased reporting by managers and the use of budget information in performance evaluation and rewards. So if we see like the if we encourage people for unbiased reporting and giving you the true picture of how the performance is, then we have to understand like if people are honestly giving you a particular feedback about whether the budget has been utilized properly or not, and if it has not been utilized properly, then and deviations have occurred, then deviations is resulting due to what causes. If that honest feedback that you are encouraging people to give that feedback to you, so it should not be affecting adversely the performance evaluation and reward management of the particular employees who are connected to it. So these are the some of the ethical issues which needs to be taken into like cognizance whenever we are talking of budgeting. The budgeting under uncertainty. So budgeting not only helps us to uh, do things properly while there is a stable situations, while everything is like under your normal control, but budgeting also helps you to uh, make your plans for your uncertainty. So budgeting as it allows management to explore many alternatives. The spreadsheets are helpful in preparing budgets and quantify what if type of conditions. Questions like what if labor costs are 10% higher or lower than the projected could be answered if you do have a proper budget in place. But to have that, the MIS system needs to be very strong, well developed to capture all details. All the activities should be stated very clearly, like the objectives as broken down into measurable activities with matrices developed to measure it, and it needs to be audited properly also, so that we have all detailed data to come to this conclusion and try to prepare ourselves for future. We have to understand this certain things are uncertain because we are not able to see what decisions we need to take. We are not able to understand like what if, because we feel like many things are unknown. But if we can increase our domain of what is known to us, and based on that we can make some predictions based on like this what if type of analysis, maybe we'll try to get some confidence in facing the uncertainties and how to prepare ourselves well ahead for it based on the budgeting that we do. So budgeting definitely helps us in much in depth in answering to those problems and getting ourselves prepared for the future. So these are some of the references that we have used over here. So what we hope like this has given you certain ideas about like the country, how budgeting is a like linking pin type of phenomena which is linked with the controlling activities, planning activities, and also with the reporting activities in the organization. And only a proper budgeting is going to help you to move closer towards your expected results and perform in a much better way with confidence. The next we will be focusing on the reporting relationships and how to prepare reports. Thank you till then.